Hello, everyone. I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. The big story in the lower 48 continues to be finally the arrival of summer heat. I'll show you how extensive it is, where the advisories and warnings are located, and how long it will last. Also, there are still some parts of the country that are very susceptible to heavy downpours, potential flash flooding. I'll outline those areas. And is it too early to really be looking for tropical weather systems and hurricanes? We'll delve into that as well. This is the Monday, July 21st edition of Weather to Watch. Let's get going. Well, in the middle of the afternoon, here is the current situation with the excessive heat. So all of these areas shaded in this kind of sherbet color here and here, that is a heat advisory. In this pinkish color, reddish color, that is an excessive heat warning. And there's actually an excessive heat watch out for parts of Iowa and Illinois as well. So at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, these are not temperatures, these are heat index values. And, you know, when they get above 100, especially above 105, that's when the alarms start to go off. That's when the excessive heat warnings really start going in place. And you can see in the middle of the afternoon, we had a handful of 105 feels like temperature readings. Bentonville, Arkansas, 112. And so, and then some of these areas up here, you would think, yeah, what's going on there? Because that's an excessive heat warning, but, you know, the temperature is 78. That's because there have been clouds and rain and a few thunderstorms in that area this afternoon. There are some rude awakenings, like Chicago, for example, had a high today in the low 80s, but over the next couple of days, it's stepping up. You can just see with each day here. So this is Wednesday here. We're getting up to 95 degrees or so, maybe a little bit above that on Friday before another little weak front drops through. And it's very common in the Great Lakes, Northern Plains, to have those little weak cool fronts go through that part of the world. They hardly ever get to any more south than that, to any meaningful extent anyway, and they hardly ever go into the Great Plains. This map looks confusing at first, but if you just pick your area, this is the hazardous heat. This is days 3 through 7. So today is considered day 1. So this would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you just pick your date there and see that you can definitely see that the hazardous heat shifts around a little bit with some of the earlier dates, like the 24th here. You see down in Louisiana, that's a big threat. Again, the Chicago area. And then as we progress through the days, you can kind of see the heat shift eastward a little bit with some of these later dates, the 28th, 26th here. So I think the point's been made that we have definitely entered the hot time of year for the U.S. here, especially the next week or so. Let's take a look at what these temperatures look like. We'll just skip every other day here. So here's Tuesday's high temperature map. Cool in Montana still, and through much of California, they're getting a break. But meanwhile, the warm temperatures are here. Now, the colors on here, if you reference on the left here, these are whether the readings are above or below normal. So, yeah, a fairly wide pattern here of above normal temperatures, 6 to 10 degrees above normal across many areas. Little Rock, 101 degrees. There's that nice cool 88 in Chicago. I showed you that graph. Look how it changes as we go to Thursday. Their high temperature 97. This is the national forecast highs. And for this part of the world, Michigan and Illinois and the Chicagoland area, that's actually far above what's normal. Some of these readings down here are hot, yeah, but like Tulsa, 99 degrees is only about 2 degrees above what's considered to be normal for this time in July. So while it is hot and it's just as dangerous, it's not terribly above normal. Also, New York State, parts of Pennsylvania will be peaking well above the normal meter there. And then on Saturday, much of the country, the majority of the country is shifting toward a hotter weather pattern for wherever you are. So if it's shaded yellow or orange, it's slightly above normal. We've got some rain-cooled air mass down here in Texas. Not by much, though. Houston will still be 94 degrees despite that. So let's take a look at the visible satellite loop on this Monday. Nice big storm circulating cumulus clouds, unstable air up and through parts of Montana. The active zone this time of year, as is so often the case, is the northern plains, although this is shifted kind of far south, I think, for the mid, even the late part of July. Thunderstorms blossoming there. I'll show you the severe weather probabilities here in a minute. It is very typical this time of year for the south. Notice how the thunderstorms here in Miami, the anvils are blowing off to the west. It's very typical for the southern part of the U.S., Miami, South Texas, to be in tropical easterly flow. So weather comes from the east and goes to the west, very typically there. Everything is rotating around this high pressure center right here. It's what's helping to bring the heat, and the only relief are these thunderstorms here. We'll show you the high pressure zone right here with the wind circulating around it like this. This is an artifact of the actual thunderstorm development itself, the low. There's that nice circulation off New England. And there's a trough coming into the Pacific Northwest, which explains why much of California is going to be on the cool side here for a change. Let's take a look at the radar and the most active weather in terms of just radar echoes themselves, and also severe thunderstorm warnings is right here along the Kansas-Nebraska border. Also some scattered storms down here into the panhandle regions of Oklahoma, Texas, also in Montana. Just every once in a while, one of those storms will get the severe levels there, and some flash flood warnings on the Rio Grande down there, and more or less air mass thunderstorms there in Florida. Well, let's look at the rain hazard. So this is just a probability that flash flood guidance will be exceeded. In other words, the deeper the color here, the more likely that flash flood warnings are going to be issued. So these areas of yellow are the ones you want to watch, right here and right here. So that's a slight, at least 15% chance of what I just said happening. Flash flood warning criteria met or exceeded. And then coastal areas of South Carolina tomorrow, increasingly then in New Mexico and parts of Arizona, including Tucson, and the northern plains are really beginning to act up. And that area kind of stays stagnant, maybe moves a little more east. On Wednesday up here, the UP of Michigan, northern Wisconsin, heavy rain potential, at least measurable. And then down here through the Great Plains, a little less risk, and same with Florida and much of the southeast. Let's take a look at the latest total precipitation forecast. This is for the next 5 days. And you can see there are two areas of concern, the northern plains and mostly coastal areas of the Gulf, but including some areas of Florida and the extreme southern portion of some of those states. Let's just break it down. Take a look at Minnesota and Wisconsin, where we're seeing 2 to 3+ inch totals, very common over the next 5 days. Most of that's front loaded for the next several days. And so again, flash flooding is a concern up there. And then this is not a tropical system. This isn't the Dexter wannabe. This is just tropical air mass thunderstorms, not really connected with that I saw with any potential for tropical development. But you're seeing, 2 to 3 inch totals again from Tampa northward into north central Florida, and again coastal areas of Louisiana, and also Mississippi and Alabama as well. Now, going a little bit more into the future, again, this is the day 3 through 7, so it starts on Wednesday. This is going to continue down here, right along I-10, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and also New Orleans, Louisiana, and getting over into Mobile. All pretty good rain potential, even going beyond, so 24th through 28th, looking at that. And then if we extend this even more to the end of July and even the early part of August, still a very persistent rain pattern in Louisiana, South Mississippi, South Alabama, especially the western coast of Florida and the Panhandle. And as you might expect, the northern plains, where the frontal zone is most active and the jet stream is most active, we both get a combination of heavy rain potential on these dates with a moderate risk right there in the center in North Dakota, parts of Minnesota, but also a severe thunderstorm risk too, and we'll cover that next. Well, here is the severe storms risk. This is for the remainder of this evening, and it actually technically goes through 7 a.m. on Central Daylight Time. So we got the small area around Atlanta, South Carolina, where there could be a few air mass thunderstorms that produce some wind gusts. A pretty broad brush area in the Central Plains, but then the highest risk, a slight risk, is the yellow shading. They will zoom in on that. So that's Bismarck and getting over into parts of Montana, almost including Billings, kind of the corner, I guess you could say, of South Dakota here this evening. There is a tornado risk with this. It'll wait until after the storms get a little more developed here. So basically right along the North Dakota-South Dakota border and back over to Montana, including Billings, of 2% risk of a tornado within a 25-mile radius. 3, 2, 1. Then on Tuesday, this shifts eastward with the jet stream flow. And so the heart of Minnesota under a level 2, this same area in the southeast and almost the same area in the Great Plains too. Notice a real lack of any thunderstorm activity all here with this hot air dome building. Again, we'll zoom in on the northern plains in particular. So Minneapolis, Fargo, St. Cloud, Minnesota, all included in that slight risk tomorrow, level 2 out of 5. And then if we go to Wednesday, this kind of shifts along with the frontal boundary. Still includes Minneapolis, includes a northern swath of Wisconsin and also the UP of Michigan. And remember, that's where the heavy rain was also forecast to develop in that area as well. And then the supercell composite, this is for now getting into early August, and it is pretty active from Illinois all the way up into southern Canada with a pretty high probability of supercells. Supercells are kind of the core. If you can get those to develop, then your severe weather chances go up significantly. And severe weather is considered hail greater than 1 inch in diameter, wind gusts 59 miles per hour or greater, or, of course, a tornado. Tropical forecast for the Atlantic. We have a pretty low probability, 10% of a storm forming well out over the Atlantic and well off to the east of any land masses of any concern. And it's a pretty low probability, too. That's for the next 7 days. If I take a look at the Euro model, this is valid. This particular snapshot is valid on the 2nd, which I believe is Saturday. So that's coming up, and it looks like a slightly higher probability, 10 to 20% chance in roughly that same area. This keeps showing up consistently on the models. There's very warm sea surface temperatures here, as I'll show you right now, and so it is kind of making the model spin up maybe a few things that maybe or I don't know if they actually will develop, is what I'm trying to say. And the Gulf is fairly warm, but notice this part of the ocean here is actually not that warm. In fact, the southern Caribbean is actually very cool compared to normal. But again, normal temperatures as we get into August are acceptable sea surface temperatures for hurricane development. They don't have to be above normal. So here's the Atlantic hurricane list so far. We were thinking last week we would have a Dexter. We didn't. So it doesn't look like we'll be using the names here anytime soon anyway. And for those of you who wonder, here's a graph that shows normal hurricane activity in the Atlantic when it starts to peak. So you'll notice we're sitting about right here. It's pretty much low maintenance. There's not much going on, but look how quickly hurricane frequency ramps up through the month of August. This peak is right around September 10th. I think it's 10th, maybe 11th now. And so it just divides us out by hurricanes and tropical storms, but the curve is exactly the same. And then it drops off a little less rapidly as we go in through the month of October. We'll switch to the East Pacific real quick. This is the next one on the list would be Gil, but again, it's only a 10% chance. Hawaii is right behind my legend there. So this is way out. They've been forming out here earlier in the season. Now there's maybe some emphasis for this area to have some development. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.